Welcome to Double Fries, No Slaw. What are we at, Richie, here? It's a Sunday afternoon. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is. November 10th, Florida State, officially eliminated from playoff contention with a loss to Notre Dame, 50 million to 3. Thank God for that 3 at the beginning so we didn't get shut out. But we are here to chat about Florida State, talk about the game a little bit, talk a little big picture. Big shout out to our women's soccer team who is just about 7.5 minutes away from another ACC championship. They're, sixth consecutive? Win a ton of them in a row. So anyway, Richie, how's it going, man?
Good. It's actually been a really good weekend. And unlike our football team, TJ, you and I keep showing up every weekend. But no, it's honestly, it's been a good weekend. The night games, I hate those because I have to stay up way past my bedtime, but I did. Luckily, Alabama LSU was on at the same time. And, my wife was happy because Alabama just did whatever they wanted to the Tigers in Death Valley. So I cannot complain about that. Today went to church, had a good day, went out with some friends afterwards, and I'm here now with you. But again, we will keep showing up every single Sunday and Wednesday, and you will keep posting videos every single day because we are professionals here, right, TJ? We are professionals in what we do.
We are, Richie, and we deserve pats on the back for continuing to show up, in my opinion. So
we're a 1-19. Yeah, I think so.
Someone else who deserves a pat on the back, certainly not Adam Fuller, as I think Notre Dame just converted another third down, would be Guthrie's. You can visit all three of their locations, 1818 West Tennessee Street, 2550 North Monroe, and 2870 Appalachian Parkway. If you're anywhere near Guthrie's, really anywhere, go show those folks some love. Make sure you get your gut box double fries, no slaw. And then Richie said that showing up, we'll continue to show up. We should do a call-in show on Wednesday. Since we don't have a preview, we'll just let people call in and vent. Unless you have plans. If you have plans, that's fine. I know it's
I'm down. I'm down to vent. And shout out to Hunter real quick, a loyal listener and viewer. Our volleyball team is crushing NC State right now. So can we turn this to volleyball podcast?
Volleyball and women's soccer would probably make people happier. Yeah, no. It's been a good weekend, though. Okay, so I disagree with you on this. It's good to disagree. Not like Stephen A. and Skip type disagreements. No. But I actually do enjoy the night games because I liked watching the day games like with my mind clear. Obviously, Texas dismantles Florida. Georgia Tech, down to their 8th string quarterback and running back, beats Miami. The 3:30 games, Ole Miss winning was really good. Colorado was in a really good game. I know everybody hates them, and maybe we'll do a Dion segment.
It was a great slate of games.
Yeah, it was a lot of good football.
Yeah.
The night game sucked. Obviously, our game sucked. I know you wanted Bama to win. I didn't have a huge preference in that, but for LSU to not even show up, I was pretty surprised by the way that one went down. Shout out our guy Kenny. I watched that on one of my TVs. They had a really good game with UCF. Shout out Kenny, 7-2. And then the Holy War was great. I know you didn't stay up for that. I know that's way out of the realm of possibilities, but I did stay up till 2 a.m. watching BYU and Utah, and that was phenomenal. So, but I like the night games better because then I don't have to think about our game until I get to enjoy 2 windows of football before ours comes on. So, slight difference in.
I did see the highlights. So here's the thing, TJ. I'm in bed early. I was in bed right as soon as the 52-3 finished. But I was up at 5 a.m. today watching all the highlights of the late games and saw BYU's last second field goal in the Holy War, and for them to stay undefeated, that's exciting for me as a college football fan. Not necessarily Florida State. Obviously, this is a Florida State centric show, but BYU, Army, these are teams that I'm really excited to see what happens.
Yeah, Indiana's undefeated right now, 10-0.
Yeah.
Crazy as this. Colorado, again, I know everybody hates Dion, but 7-2 at Colorado. If they went out, they're in the Big 12 championship, and then obviously if they beat BYU, they go to the college football playoff, which rubs some more salt in the wound. So anyway, make sure you're subscribed if you're watching this now or on the replay. I know that we're going up against the NFL games, but hey, if the team can quit and the coaches don't give a crap, then I'll go during the middle of the NFL games. We'll be fine. Sorry that we're a little bit late. I moved us early and I ran into some other people's plans. So it's a little bit my fault, a little bit Richie's, but mostly my fault. So I'll take the blame on this. Mostly Cooper's fault. That guy Cooper. It's mostly his fault.
Yeah, Cooper Hawk is who to blame.
All right, last thing, and then we'll get into it. Richie, you go to a Baptist church?
Yes.
You can't be doing wine tastings after a Baptist church, bro. You have to go to a Catholic church for that.
No, it's all good.
We don't allow that in the Baptist churches.
It's all good.
I'm just giving you a hard time. So, all right, FSU soccer 3 minutes away from an ACC championship. Let's get into it. Notre Dame.
Oh.
All right, so here's my biggest frustration with the game. We'll move on from the game pretty quickly. I don't have a ton of thoughts because I want to get to some of these other points that are more big picture. But the most frustrating thing to me is that yesterday Georgia Tech played a top 5 undefeated Miami team, who Miami certainly, we've called them frauds all year. Still a really good team, but kind of fraud-like. Georgia Tech's quarterback was so banged up, Richie, that he could not throw the ball. And so when they would bring, Haynes King in, they were only running the ball, and they would bring the other quarterbacks in. They threw every time. It was almost like a big sign they held up saying, here's what we're going to do on this play. And they still looked competent enough to not only be in the game, but also win. Not that I had any grand illusions about Florida State winning this game yesterday, but the fact that Georgia Tech has recruited well enough with backups, they had their top 2 running backs out. Their middle linebacker got hurt. Their quarterback was so hurt that he couldn't throw the ball. They telegraphed what they were going to do to Miami. With all those things considered, it's not even about them winning the game, which obviously very thankful they won that game and kind of exposed Miami. It's the fact that Georgia Tech is competent enough down multiple players at their level to stay competitive. And then obviously they won, which is great. Go Jackets. But we're not even close to that. Florida scored, and I know a lot of it was in garbage time. Florida scored 17 on Texas, right? And Florida had more yardage against Texas than any other team this year. Now, I know a lot of that's garbage time. But we played in a lot of garbage time too last night. And so the fact that we're not even competitive when the other team puts their backups in, we're not even competitive is probably, there's so many bad things. I don't want to say, it's the worst thing. But to me, that's my biggest takeaway is that Florida State can't even be competitive when backups are in, when the other team has essentially waved the white flag. So yeah, I don't know, man. Pretty brutal when you look at it from that perspective.
You bring up Texas, right? And I think that's a great comparison right now because Steve Sarkisian was brutal his first 2 years there. I think he was 13-12 in his first 2 years at Texas. And Mike Norvell obviously had a very rough start. 3-6 in a COVID year. It's whatever. I don't really care about that one. 5-7, but at the end of that season, things looked really good. 10-3, 13-0, and now it's where we are right now. You're in year 5. This is your roster. You are the one who built this. You are the one who brought all these players in. You are the one who has failed to recruit at an elite level in high school, even coming off of a 13-1 season. It's just unexplainable to me. And to your point, Florida, I don't care if it was garbage time. We had plenty of garbage time, like you said. Scored 17 at Texas in Austin. And you can't even find the end zone against Notre Dame. And, we can argue, did Mike really think that we could win the game yesterday with a field goal on that right there, what was it, on the 3-4 yard line? I think you got to go for it there. We're at the point. You're sitting there 1-8. Now you're 1-9. Go for broke and just see what you can do. But he just chose to take the safe, option with Ryan Fitzgerald, who shout out to him, man, and Alex Maschermano, with best kicker punter duo in the country, in my opinion. It's not close. And I do want to talk a little bit about the missed block punts and the blocked punt. That is a major issue. But yeah, to just take the 3 points and go. And I tweeted at the time in real time. I'm like, you had to take the 3 points there because it was 7-3. So whatever. But Yeah, and then the offense just did absolutely nothing. I'll pull up the stats, but like Brock was like 5 of 18. I think Luke was 5 of 8. You had less than 100 passing yards last night. That that is unacceptable with a offensive minded head coach who claimed this program was a program with an offense built for playmakers. Well, where are your playmakers, Mike? I would love to know where they're at because you've had 5 years to get them here, and I don't see any. Shout out Lawrence Sofili. That man is just running hard as hell, nonstop, and he seems like the only guy, him and maybe Ja'Kai Douglas, who give a damn anymore about on the offensive side of the ball. I don't see anybody else who really cares. I really don't, TJ.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't. I don't think they care. I don't think the coaches care anymore. I don't think. I don't. The fans don't care. Obviously, the fans have been checked out for a while. The coaches don't care. The players don't care. It is about getting through. I mean, it sucks that we have a third bye. It sucks that we have to wait one more week before this is over. But nobody does care. Yeah, on the punts and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, JP is everybody wants to keep JP because he got he can go. You can launch him into the sun too. Special teams to not be able to adjust to that, to not be able to adjust to them. They could have had 4 blocked punts, and they had 2, but they could have had 4. And you're putting guys out there that are walk-ons and everything. They're just not taking it seriously. They're not taking anything seriously. They don't know how to adjust. And so, launch the entire staff into the sun from top to bottom. I'm pretty out on Norvell at this point. I understand it's not going to happen, but we'll talk more about him in a minute. But yeah, it does not get any worse than what it is right now. Soccer did just win their 5th ACC championship. So a big shout out to them.
Positive news on a Sunday.
A sport that does actually take, or a program in Tallahassee that actually takes things seriously. That's their 5th consecutive ACC tournament championship, 11 in the last 14. I was actually just talking with somebody at Florida State before we got on here, and to do that with North Carolina in your conference is pretty ridiculous. But yeah, it is. It's unconscionable that Florida State is this bad. We got on the post game last night, Richie, and I wasn't really that upset with the game because who cares? Like that, it went down about like we thought. But the problem, Richie, to me, is not necessarily that you lost the game. People were saying, why are you so upset? Why do you care? This went down the way that you thought it would go down. That's why I'm upset, is because that was the expectation. That's the standard. That's the Florida State standard is, you're supposed to get blown out. Why are you upset about it? No. Like the problem is not necessarily that you got blown out. It's the fact that we're okay with it. It's the fact that hey, you were supposed to lose like this. Like who cares? Like no big deal. To me, that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, no, 100% because, I think I said that 38-10 and my goodness, was I generous with that prediction. But yeah, the fact that I think that's where I'm at, TJ, as well, is that, I told my wife, like, we'll put both games on the TV and watch. And literally by the mid-second quarter, I cared more about the Alabama LSU game because that was actually close, right? That was close. And I am a diehard Florida State fan, have been since '95. And I just could not care less about what happens. And that is the issue. When you get to a level where you have your most diehard fans of 20, 30 years, and many beyond that. Like I've met people that have had season tickets for 50 plus years, right? Where they just don't care, where you're at the point of apathy and it just doesn't matter to you. Like this is an embarrassment of a season. And for Mike Norvell let this happen. And I get it. We talked about this in the past that okay, maybe you went 13-1. Why are you going to make staff changes? Well, you know what? Sometimes if you're a leader of a department at your job, or you're a CEO at a company, and you have a really good year, you still need to evaluate what you have working under you to keep the thing going in the right direction. And Mike Norvell absolutely failed to do that. It was clear as day that he just wasn't going to do it. And now here we are. And what is it? It is 2:16 p.m. on Sunday, heading into a bye week. No assistant coaches have been fired yet. That's a problem, TJ.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. So, we've talked about this and we've belabored this point, and I don't know that us going into it again is going to, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to make anything any better. But yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Why have no coaching? But you know what? But I'm going to keep belaboring that point. We're going to keep beating it to death, and we're going to keep doing videos on it. We're going to keep doing segments on it because this is Florida State, and you're supposed to have a standard. And why, Richie, why is nobody fired yet?
That makes no sense to me. Someone in the comments just said the team's probably traveling back. No, they headed back last night. They did not. They do never stay the Saturday night of the game. Those conversations should have been held first thing this morning. Mike Norvell, to his credit, he is a workhorse. He is in the building by 5, 6 a.m. every single day. I guarantee you he was there by 6 a.m. at the latest this morning at the Moore Center. And he should have had a laundry list of assistants lined up to say, listen, appreciate what you've done here, but it's over. There's nothing, we talked a few weeks ago about this, about, what are we going to do? And my biggest issue was, well, if you start firing all these assistants, then, what happens to the recruiting class? What recruiting class? We'll get into that in a second. There's nothing to save at this point, and you're going to lose more players, and you're going to lose a ton of good, young, talented players on your roster already. Mike needs, and I think it was Blowstein from 247, Zach. It's an olive branch to the fan base saying, listen, I understand and I recognize that we have a major issue. This is not okay, and we're going to make changes needed as necessary. And he's just not done it. Again, it's only 2:19 p.m. right now on Sunday. Maybe by 6 p.m. we'll get some updates from the athletic department or from Alford or whoever it is. But, I'm to the point, TJ, and I love him. He's been so good to me and my family, Michael Alford. He needs to make Norvell make these changes too, because he's becoming complacent as well, as long as he lets this go on. Again, heading into a bye week, there is no excuse. We've seen coordinators of other teams all over the country being fired in the past 3-4 weeks. But Adam Fuller still has a job. Alex Atkins still has a job. I just don't understand.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And my only guess at this, and again, I like Michael Alford so much. This is, but at the end of the day, I mean, it is his athletic department, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that to me at this point, I think I would have to walk into Mike's office and say, you have to fire people, or I will relieve them of their duties if you do not make a change immediately. Richie, we're not getting better. So how about this? I hate to compare everything here and I hate to go into this so much, but so Colorado last year started out hot. They were at one point, I think they were 4-3, and then they lost their last 5 games. But in that 4-3, they got blown out by Oregon. They weren't close. They were somewhat competitive against USC, but I think they lost by 2 scores. It was never really that close. They kept cutting it to 1 score, then back down to 2 and 1-2. But down the stretch, and not trying to give Coach Prime all this credit or whatever, but down the stretch, Colorado played a lot of teams close. Like they barely lost to Utah, who was a good team last year. They barely lost to. Just all their games were close down the stretch. Yeah. They did have one blowout where Shedeur didn't play against Washington State, but Cam Ward them. But against everyone else, they were relatively close. And you could say I think they lost 3 or 4 of their last 5 games by 1 score. So you could see that Colorado was getting better, but they weren't winning games, right? Like they weren't. At the end of the day, you get
here. Yeah,
you get paid to win games. I get it. But just playing better, even with Florida, okay, you hate Coach Prime. I know you hate this team too. You see Florida. Now I know that yesterday without Lagway and stuff, they had a bunch of injuries. I think they had 11 starters out yesterday,
That's bad,
which is insane. Billy Napier is not a good coach, but certainly the most unlucky coach in America. They at least like try, right? Like they should have beaten Georgia if Lagway doesn't go down, and they should have beaten Tennessee, and they blew out Kentucky, and they blew out Mississippi State, and they dominated UCF, and their guys still give max effort and still try. And I do think Florida, I mean, wouldn't surprise me if they beat LSU next week. Obviously, I expect them to beat us. Would it shock you if they beat Ole Miss? And maybe after Ole Miss beat Georgia the way they did, yeah, like that one would surprise you, but. Like, it's not going to surprise me if Florida gets an upset in one of the next 2 weeks and then beats us to get to 6-6 in a bowl game, because their guys actually care and they actually give effort. And obviously a lot of that will depend on whether or not Lagway plays. Obviously, I don't think our game depends on whether or not Lagway plays, but you look at teams like just attempting to get better or trying to get better. Florida State is actually getting worse every single week. Like, the more time that our players spend around these coaches, the worse they get. And Mike had this, I mentioned this Wednesday, Mike had this big, long diatribe about, well, if our coaches are still investing into players and if they're still pouring into these players and doing this and doing that and doing the other, then, then we got to retain them. Essentially is what he said. I mean, he didn't say retain like that. But the only thing I can think, Richie, is that like Mike is just being very intentionally stubborn about this. Like almost I don't think it goes any further than this. Like, I don't think Rich guys, like especially college football coaches, like to be told what to do or like to be forced into what they want to do. I mean, I don't, as a poor guy, like I don't like to be told what to do. Like, who cares? Like, I told you to take that trash out. I'm like, well, I didn't do it because you have been nagging me about it, right? Like, or whatever. Like, I mean, I'm even like, so I get it, but I just think that to me, it feels like at this point, Mike is not doing it for culture, because God knows we don't have any of that. He's not doing it for the recruiting class, because God knows we don't have any of that. He's not doing it for the portal, because obviously you'd want to get new coaches in as quickly as possible. He's not doing it because the coaches are doing a good job. And so at this point, it feels to me like Mike is just being stubborn. And that is almost more worrisome, or as worrisome as the record and everything else. Because when there starts to be any kind of a strife or animosity, like if you're still approaching this somewhat humble as a guy making $10 million a year could be, right? It almost feels like the end of the Jimbo thing, where it's like, hey, I know what the right thing to do is here. I know that change needs to happen, but I'm going to prove to you that I'm right, and I'm going to be stubborn about it, and I'm not going to make changes. And that's what it feels like to me. Now, Michael Alford has not told me that. Nobody within Florida State's building has told me that. But it just feels like a straight, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to Frank Sinatra this thing, right? Good little segue there. But I am not going to do it the way that I know needs to be done, and I'm going to be stubborn about it. And that's, I don't know, that's the vibe it gives off to me.
Yeah, and it's a major issue, because when you think about Florida State's downfall, in 2012, Florida State lost 6 assistant coaches, and Jimbo made some miraculous hires for 2013. Granted, it helps to have a guy like Jameis Winston and Kelvin Benjamin coming into his own in all of that extreme talent. Telvin Smith leading the defense, but the changes, Jimbo was kind of forced to make them because the coaches left, because Jimbo was really hard to work for. But to his credit, he made some phenomenal hires to replace those guys. And if Mike is refusing to make changes, I just don't see any way he can't at this point. And like I said, if we get to Wednesday by lunchtime and no firings have been made, that tells me that, to your point, TJ, he is stubborn and he's refusing to self-evaluate in a way that he needs to. It's never fun firing anybody. Anybody who's ever had to fire somebody knows that it sucks, especially if you have a good relationship with them or their significant other or their family, whoever it may be. It's a terrible thing to have to do, but at the end of the day, if you are the head of your department and Mike Norvell is the head of the Florida State football program, you need to make those decisions, and you cannot wait until after the Florida game at this point. You have to make a decision on, in my opinion, 2, 3, 4, 5 coaches. I don't expect them all this week, but honestly, everyone except for Pat Surtain can go. I'd be fine with that. And the problem with Florida State right now with Mike Norvell is, how do you get quality assistants to come in and fill those spots. So I understand that hesitation, but if Mike Norvell wants to show that he wants to be here long term, that he's really all in and pot committed, he needs to own this season. Say, listen, I messed up last year. I know we went 13-0. I should have made changes. I didn't. But of our 9 assistants, I'm getting rid of 7 of them. It needs to be more than 5. If it's not more than 5, Mike's got to go at that point. He has to.
Yeah, if it's not and that number keeps moving up, right? Like for me earlier in the year, it was like, well, if it's not 3, then if it's not 5, to me that number is closer to 7. Like, and we can go through each one of them if you want. Like, I don't care. Whatever. We know all the staff members' names. Alex Atkins has to go. Adam Fuller has to go. Ron Dugans has to go. Randy Shannon has to go. Odell has to go. And JP has to go. That's 6 right there. So if you're going to be Yak, I don't think is a good recruiter. He could go. I don't think Chris Thompson's a net positive or negative. Like, he's just kind of there. If you want to move him to offensive line, that's fine. I don't think that Tokars is a huge positive for you. And so but if you want to keep him for continuity, that's fine too as a quarterback coach. And then I think Surtain leaves on his own volition. So there's your 8th, right? So I think they would try to keep Surtain. I don't think he stays. Anyway, so yeah, to me, if it's not at least 7, then that's a massive problem, especially because you're probably going to get a freebie with Surtain leaving, even though you don't want him to leave. I've been told that probably isn't a very tenable situation anyway. So yeah, I mean, hopefully they'll make changes. The fact that it's, now 2:30 on Sunday afternoon and nothing has been changed. I mean, you talk about getting a Wednesday. They're not going to do this on Monday. If it doesn't happen today or before Mike's press conference, he's not going to do it after his press conference on Monday. I'd be shocked. More shocked than I am at 1-9. If he did it once the press conference happens, because if you were going to do it, you'd want to give yourself as much time as physically possible between now and the next time you play with the backups. So I do think that if it doesn't happen, like I said, within the next 24 hours or less, it's not going to happen this week. So, yeah. Richie, give Rhoback some love, and we'll move on to our next topic.
Yeah, again, really excited to partner with Rhoback this season. And, I actually played in the charity golf tournament that my work sponsored on Friday at the Royal St. Cloud Golf Club. They don't sponsor us, but beautiful conditions. I'll give them a little love too. But yeah, wore my Rhoback FSU polo, my Rhoback joggers, and I'm honestly, guys, these are some of the most comfortable performance gear that you will wear. I would highly recommend use promo code DFNS20 and you will get 20% off your first time purchase. Again, DFNS20, 20% off any first time purchase. And if you're so ashamed, like a lot of us might be right now, that you don't want Florida State gear, that's okay. They have plenty of other great polos, hoodies, joggers, shorts, anything you can think of. Give them a chance. Rhoback.com, RHOBACK.com. Promo code DFNS20 for any first time purchase, 20% off. I promise you guys, if you give them a buy and get a polo, some joggers, a hoodie, whatever it may be, you will buy again. I can assure you that.
So, I've talked about this a little bit off air, Richie, and just want to kind of get your take on this. But a few years ago, when Michigan went 2-4 in that COVID shortened year, I don't know if this was Harbaugh doing this out of the goodness of his heart, or if he kind of got told by Michigan's, brass, hey, you're going to do this, because he had just gotten a big extension too. But Harbaugh took a pay cut, and he took a pay cut because he basically replaced 60% of his staff and moved some other guys around, and other guys had to take pay cut. He took a pay cut to essentially help undo what he had done in some of the extensions and some of the firings that he had to do. And I'll tell you, Michigan's got money, right? They weren't hurting for the money. They certainly already were in a better financial spot than we are. Mike Norvell making $10 million a year and is probably going to finish with 10 or more losses. I'll call for it. Yeah. Mike Norvell should absolutely take a pay cut to help Florida State with what is going to be a very expensive coaching turnover, right? Like you have a top 15 paid staff in all of college football, and you're going to have to fire more than half of them, I believe. If not, we won't do previews next year. We will literally just say that we should fire Norvell every single Wednesday night. But I think Mike Norvell should take a pay cut after this season. Whether that's disclosed or not I don't care. Like, it doesn't need to. Now, I do think that if it was disclosed, that would be a really good way to kind of maybe win back some favor with this fan base that has completely given up on him. But I think that if you believe in the standard and you believe in all this bullcrap about how you do anything is how you do everything, I think Norvell should do what Harbaugh did and take a pay cut to help Florida State offload some of this. I'm not saying he needs to give up half his salary. I'm not going crazy with anything like that. But if he said, I'm making $10 million next year, I'm going to put $2 million back into hiring a new staff or buying out this staff, because ultimately it falls on me. If you're going to practice what you preach and practice accountability and preach accountability and all these things, you need to suffer a little bit of a consequence. And I will say, suffering a consequence of making $8 million as opposed to $10 million is quite a small price to pay in the grand scheme of things. When you look at some of the money that's been lost by local Tallahassee businesses, when you look at the money that the Battle's End and the Seminole Boosters and different organizations are going to lose, going from $10 million to $8 million is a pretty small price to pay, in my opinion. Again, it's not my money, but I think that should be something Mike Norvell does.
Yeah. So, TJ, yeah, you and I have both been, and probably every listener, if you're tuning into our show today, you've probably been to one of these spring Seminole Booster tours. And what are those going to look like next year? Especially if no changes are made. And I do think changes will be made. But I think Mike Norvell should absolutely say, listen, I'll give back a little bit of what I'm contracted to earn. And, wealthy people never want to lose a penny. My wealthiest friends are the cheapest people I know. But to your point, TJ, it's the difference between $10 and $8 million. It's not that big of a deal. And I just think it could be very contentious on that spring booster tour next year if he doesn't make the changes he needs to make. I think he will make some. I think he'll make. I don't know if we'll make as many as we want, as much as we think needs to be made. But this could get really bad really quickly. And, by the way, next year, first game, Alabama. Yeah, that's going to be a great start to the season. And that game will sell out easy. Mads will be sold out. Garnet and Gold will sell a ton of merch. But if you lose that game the way I think you're going to lose it, with how everything is in place right now, you're going to have a really hard time filling that stadium that you just spent $400 million on to renovate.
Yeah. You've also got the money going to the football only facility. Obviously, you have a $30 to $50 million gap between SEC programs. Obviously, when you think about where we were in December, and you think like how Mike Norvell was a 10 out of 10 in our minds, like we were all the way bought into everything he sold. And you think about it now, I mean, most fans are at a 0 or 1 or 2 or whatever, like somewhere pretty low. Obviously it's not going to undo this season, but what do you think it would do from a fan perspective if he did come out on record and say like, look, I take accountability for this. I'm going to put $2 million of my own money back into the program. I'm going to take less money this year to help it obviously is not going to take people back up to where they were a year ago, right? Like where he's the greatest coach of all time and Bobby 2.0 and all this other crap. But I do think it would make me respect him. Like you can't say the buck starts with me and stops with me and own it without being part of the solution. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like how much do you think it would kind of win back some of the fan base?
I don't think it wins back the fan base at all. I do think it gives him the slightest bit of grace, because at that point fans could say, okay, at least you're willing to put your own money up, to show, listen, I screwed up. Self-accountability is something in life that I think people don't respect enough. And that would be him taking accountability for his own failures. And he has failed the past, 9 months. And it is what it is. He had a phenomenal 2023 season, but here we are right now. He's the one who built this entire roster. It's like we don't have leftovers from Willie Taggart or Jimbo Fisher at this point. This roster he has is what he built. And if he were to take accountability and say, listen, I made some mistakes along the way. I've been learning, but here's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to put my own money up to say, hey, listen, I'm here to help financially to make sure I can get a better staff around me. And you have to be careful about how you phrase that because Mike Norvell, I think it's a strength and also a weakness. He truly does care about every single person he works with. I don't think you could say that about Jimbo Fisher. And he's not going to throw any of them under the bus. But I think it is a weakness in terms of he will not move on as soon as he should. And, that's a problem when you are in a results oriented business. We'll see what happens this week.
Yeah, no, I think it would be something that would, be kind of ideal. I don't expect it to happen. But I do think it's something that likely should happen. We'll see. I'd love to be proven wrong on that. Hey, I'll give some love to Garnet and Gold, and we'll move on from that one. GarnetandGold.com, again, another local business that I've not even asked them about this, but I can put two and two together and assume that they're probably struggling with some of the challenges that Florida State has had. Certainly hitting all local businesses in Tallahassee pretty hard, something that, again, squarely on Mike Norvell's shoulders. But, Noslaw, Noslaw, a lot of holiday shopping coming up. Obviously, you guys will be in a better mood around the holidays because, first of all, it is the holidays. Second of all, there will be no Florida State football to bring you down. And so if you are shopping for the holidays, make sure that you're using code NOSLAW, Noslaw, for 15% off your order at garnetandgold.com. If you're going in person, you can also order ahead and pick up in Tallahassee at any of their locations to save on shipping. Appreciate Garnet and Gold for their support. Richie, moving on from that, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but recruiting, certainly something that's taking a hit right now. If you're a recruit and you're considering Tallahassee, I don't know why you would commit. Now, Florida State actually today did just pick up a couple of three-star edge prospects that were just recently committed to UCF. However, it certainly, and I don't mean to belittle those kids or future Noles or whatever. Hopefully they turn into just absolutely talented first-round picks, and they're both number 1 and number 2 in the draft in a few years. I don't know that I'm necessarily counting on that with the development track record here at Florida State, but I would love to see that. But outside of that, man, Richie, what do you even sell? How do you even sell to a recruit right now? We'll talk about some specific stuff that's coming up with a couple of flips that I expect to happen pretty soon. But how do you even sell this program right now?
You have absolutely nothing to sell. And, it's unfortunate because, the sports business media, it's so far out there now that even high school kids are hearing about, okay, so the SEC and the Big Ten are going to make this much more money than Florida State. And they immediately, if I'm a 17-year-old kid, I'm a high 4-star, 5-star recruit, I'm thinking, okay, well, that means Florida State can't pay me as much as, an Alabama or even an Ole Miss, who Ole Miss actually has a really good collective. Dave Portnoy just donated $40,000 to their collective, which is insane. But yeah, from a recruiting standpoint, if you get a kid on campus, it's easy to sell Florida State. It really is. If you can show them, I don't think our facilities are that far behind as most people think, especially once we get this football-only facility built. But I just don't know what you tell kids, especially if we're talking this cycle only. And my biggest hesitation when it comes to Norvell is you just went 13-1. And you couldn't even get a top 10 class signed. That's a major issue. And I think we kind of look past it a little bit because we were so upset with the snub and whatever it may be. But yeah, it's a problem. Like Mike either is not a good recruiter or his assistants are not good recruiters, or he does not hold his assistants to the highest of standard when it comes to recruiting. And I think that's the only reason Mario Cristobal is going to last around Miami for a few more years, even after the loss of Georgia Tech, is because he holds his assistants to a standard that most coaches do not do. And Mike Norvell does not. I think he struck gold in the transfer portal early on before anyone else was really, getting in on it. And he just whiffed this year entirely. Like I can't name a single transfer who's performed to the level of what we thought they would.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, no, you're right. And there's been some guys that are just like, okay. Like I think Lolo Hay has been okay for what you thought he would be. I think that Jalen Lucas, had he not gotten hurt, would probably be pretty okay for you. And I also think that Richie Leonard, if he had stayed healthy, would probably be okay. And then Malik Benson's not been terrible. He doesn't have a quarterback that can get him the ball. So I think you've got some guys that are like, okay, right? Like, and that's it. Outside of that, yeah, no one else has been worth a damn, right? Like at all. And maybe they get better. Maybe Earl Little gets back to safety and does well. Who knows, man? Maybe in year 2 or 3, some of these guys are a lot better. But yeah, most of this, I think Jaylen Brown's out. I don't think he comes back. I think there's a rift there. And yeah, like recruiting is just going to get worse. Like Richie, you're like in the 30s right now, again, because you took a couple of 3 stars today to kind of boost the class a little bit and the way the ratings are, weighted and stuff. So they'll probably finish with a class that's between the 20s and 30s, but we'll see. I fully expect Solomon Thomas to not be in this class. I don't expect Lofton, the tight end, to be in this class. I think Tramel Jones flips to Florida. That could literally happen any day. And so, yeah, there you go. 4-star quarterback, gone. 5-star offensive lineman, gone. 4-star tight end, gone. And Kevin Wynn is probably another one, defensive lineman, that I would be pretty surprised if Florida State was able to hold on to. So, yeah, I'm saying they finish in the 20s and 30s. No, I take that back. I think they're going to be probably in the 30s or 40s. They'll be lucky to not be in the load more section when it comes to recruiting. I think Florida State is going to, just because guys haven't decommitted yet, like it's coming. And then when you fire half the staff or more, hopefully, you're going to lose more guys, right? Like there are offensive linemen that I think are committed because Alex Atkins is here. And I think Atkins, for all of his struggles, developing offensive linemen, and he's getting really good clay and just can't do anything with it. I think that there are guys that are going to decommit from that. And so, yeah, I think that, Florida State is in a desperate spot recruiting wise. And even with the double commit today, but stealing UCF stuff, like whatever. I don't think it's a good spot. And Richie, when you look at it from that perspective, you only get that like new hire coach bump once. And unfortunately for Norvell, he never got it because it was the COVID year, like just kind of unfortunate stuff went down his first year. He never really got that. He's never going to get that again. Even if you bring in new coaches who recruit better, it's still Florida State. Like you should still be able to pull in a top 15 class, like without even trying, maybe new recruiters can do that and can sell that. And you can obviously sell playing time. They've got good NIL with the battles in and stuff like that, but you're always going to be playing from behind the 8 ball. And to me, that's the biggest indictment on his tenure here, is that he never figured out recruiting. He never put the right emphasis on it. He never had accountability for it. He didn't get rid of coaches who absolutely sucked at it or just refused to do it. And you're not going to get, even if you bring in new guys, right, like that are good recruiters, like you're still not going to get that full effect of like a first-year coach with a lot of excitement and a lot of hype. Like you're just never going to be able to recapture that. He even kind of had that his second year with Travis Hunter committed and Sam McCall committed and other guys that ended up flipping away. But he ended up, he did have that kind of his second year. It wasn't quite like a first year coach would get, but when they actually had guys on campus, like they had that Midnight Madness event on June 1st, and people just talked about the energy there. And obviously Travis Hunter was there and a bunch of guys, and you were getting just elite talent on campus. Now you didn't close on very much of that. And obviously Hunter flipped away pretty famously on signing day. But you're never going to get that again. And again, to me, that's the biggest indictment on him is, do I think he can turn it around? Probably not, because he's never going to be able to recruit at the level that it takes to win at Florida State, especially not the level that it takes to win, seriously at Florida State. Like, yeah, he could get back to where we're winning 7, 8, 9 games a year in the ACC because the ACC is trash and you're going to out-recruit them most years. But you're never going to be a serious player with Mike Norvell here. I don't ever really see a situation where that happens. And so recruiting is just an absolute dumpster fire right now. And it's buckle up because it's about to get worse. I think some of your top players in this class will not be in this class once signing day comes. Again, Wynn, Thomas, Tramel Jones, which I don't think that's that big of a deal. They'll probably go get somebody else that's about as good as him. And, I think that in Lofton, I think they're all gone. So recruiting, is certainly a sore subject and probably is going to get even worse.
Yeah, and it's just an untenable situation. We're at the point right now where Morville's not showing he can close on elite recruits, right? Obviously, Travis Hunter is the the biggest one. There were some things behind the scenes that I think led to that, where Barstool came in, they deny it, but no, Barstool definitely came in and helped facilitate that. Who Dion had been doing a podcast with, but even forget about Travis Hunter. Even though he's probably going to win the Heisman, at least he should. But forget about that. Think about the Keldrick Falks, like those type of players that we should have had, that we just completely whiffed on or lost in the 11th hour. I've not seen a good signing day for Florida State probably since Jimbo was here, where I remember watching on ESPN when, even though he didn't work out the way we thought he would, Marvin Wilson, came on ESPN and said, I'm going to Florida State. And nobody thought he was coming to Florida State. Going back even further, like 2004, Antone Smith, Chris Nee famously put a thread on War Chant saying, holy crap, but without using those words, Antone Smith just signed with Florida State. Like, we've not had a good signing day in any year since Jimbo's been here. Like,
No.
we haven't had one. We haven't had a single good one in Mike's 5 years. We didn't have one in Willie's 2 years. And Jimbo called it quits after 2017, so that didn't count. So probably since 2015 or 16, we have not had a good signing day. And it's just frustrating because this is Florida State. 3 national titles in the last, 31 years. What are we doing?
Yeah, they're not close, and it's so bad, Richie, that I'm literally, as we're on here right now, I just got a notification with a guy like tweeting me a picture of Jimbo. Like, as bad as things got with Jimbo, like, I think people would take him back in a heartbeat. Not necessarily the admin, not necessarily. I don't think Jimbo wants it, but yeah, like, at least you'd get players. At least he would go out and get players.
I think Jimbo with Alford, I think that would work out because when people don't realize this, and this is any job, any business, when you have a huge ego and you want nothing but the best, you respect those who will challenge you, but also have that same ego. And that's not a negative thing to say about Alford or Jimbo, but that's what high performing professionals think. And I think it means a lot because I know I challenge people at work all the time, but they respect me for it. And I think Jimbo and Alford could work. It's not going to happen. It never will. It just won't. But I do think you could bring in a personality like that, and things could work out.
How crazy is it that we're talking about Jimbo Fisher at this point, and wanting that dumpster fire back, although certainly would take that dumpster fire over this one. Hey, if you're watching this or listening, make sure and do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. I know most of you are because I see you down in the comments, lighten us up down there, or lighten the team up, rather. But have to be subscribed to comment. Otherwise, this thing is free. And so if you want to help us out a little bit or cheer us up after the crap show that we've had of a season, do me a favor and at least hit that subscribe button. All right, Richie, let's wrap up with this. We talked about this a lot, and I asked Mike about this specifically over the offseason. I was pretty straightforward. I've heard other people ask about this, and in the moment, I didn't have a big problem with his answer. But now looking back, hindsight being 2020, I do maybe have a little bit different of a take here. When you look at the snub last year and you look at getting left out of the playoff and you look at the way that they felt so bad, I asked Mike a couple of times, a couple of different ways, once in Charlotte, once in Tampa, just, hey, how are you using the snub to motivate your players to try and get them, over that? And I do think the snub kind of broke Mike Norvell. I don't think he's the same person since then, but did he maybe handle that the wrong way? And did he should he maybe have leaned a little bit more into that? Because his big take was like, hey, I'm not going to use that. We're focused on this team. And that all sounds good in the moment. But then you look back and you're like, wow, you basically preached climb and work and effort, and how you do anything is how you do everything. And then when that carpet got snatched up under you, you maybe should have leaned back into using it a little bit more than you did. And instead of ignoring it, maybe taking it head on and using it to motivate your players. And we hear that all the time in sports. A team will lose the championship and then they come out. Like I remember, so I was a senior in high school, or I had just graduated actually, and Kobe and them lost to the Celtics. And then the next year they beat the Magic in the finals. Sorry to bring up a sore subject for you, but I guess I'll just pile on while we're both miserable. But essentially, like when they asked the Lakers, like after winning that title, and they said, yeah, we thought about that Celtic series every single day for the last 365 days. And we were not going to lose to anybody. And that is what motivated us. And Phil talked about it, and Phil Jackson, obviously. And we let that memory be what was part of the DNA of this championship team, is we used that. And so it is very hindsight's 2020. I didn't, not trying to say, oh, if I was Norvell, I'd have done something differently back then. I was fine with his answers back then. But it almost feels like to me, he probably used the snub the wrong way, and maybe should have used it a little bit more than he did. Maybe should have used it to inspire his players, to tell them, hey, you instead of them reading their press clippings of like how great you are, hey, yeah, you should be pissed off. We are going to use this. We are going to, hey, you don't want to run that extra lap? Like, think about what they did to you in December. So I don't know. I don't think there's like a certain specific right or wrong answer on this, but I almost think he may have misused the snub a little bit. And looking back, trying to find answers into what's going on here, I think he probably, if he had to do that over again, might have done it a little bit different. Instead of being a broken man that just looks like he's about to cry on the side of the sideline, he could have gone like, Darth Vader on the sideline all year and just been that pissed off guy of using the snub. So I don't know. I think he may have misused that a bit. Is that a hot take?
2 quick points. If Courtney Lee converts that alley-oop on the game 2 in LA, and if Derek Fisher never makes that 3, the Magic have an NBA Finals. So I just had to say that because it still sticks with me to this day. But no, yeah, I think he tried to take the high road, right? Mike Norvell. He took the high road. He said, okay, well, we're going to do what we can do, control what we can control, all that yada yada nonsense. I think he should have just went scorch earth and said, no, this is bullshit. We belonged in the playoffs. Like, call them out, call everybody out, call Kirk Herbstreit out. And I get the risks of that because, unfortunately, just like in politics, we just had an election. The media has a ton of influence and more power than we would love them to have. Kirk Herbstreit and the brass at ESPN, they have a ton of power, and you do not want to piss them off if you are the head coach at a major university. I just think it was an unfortunate situation. I think what frustrates me the most about it, and this is what put Mike in such a bad position. Even if Jordan never goes down, I don't think Florida State gets in.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think they would have found an excuse or a reason to leave Florida State out. That was just the convenient excuse, because you couldn't put Texas in, or you couldn't get Bama in without putting Texas in because Texas won at Bama. So someone had to get left out, and unfortunately, it was us. It was Florida State. But yeah, I think Mike. I think he should have been more aggressive in his media hits in terms of saying, listen, this is unacceptable. How does this happen? Called people out. And I get why he didn't. He was just, I can't get mad. I'm mad at Mike for a lot of things. I can't get too mad at him for that situation because it was literally a no-win situation for him.
Yeah, it's a hard situation for him. I don't really know what more he could have done, but I do know that the snub absolutely shook him to his absolute core, and it basically
live reaction. Yeah,
Yeah, it basically undid everything that he did, or that he preached for the 4 years that he was there. Hey, if you just trust the process, if you trust the work, if you just don't worry about the results, that'll take care of itself. And that's not what happened. Florida State did all those things well, and they did trust the work, and they did fight for their fallen brother, and all these things, right? Like all these little, cliche things that we want to say about Jordan going down and everything else. But I think he went from, like Mike had a clear and defined message before the snub happened of like, hey, this is what's going to happen. And to me, to go back to that message after that message, not Mike's fault, but to go back to that message after your message had then been disproven, right? At that point, the committee, whether you think they're right or wrong, the committee disproved Mike's message. The committee disproved Mike's theory on just do the right things and it'll all work out your way. And so
it reminds me the locker room video after Florida State beat Louisville. Mike is pumped up and he says, "We ain't done yet." And then less than 12 hours later, that goes down. To your point, DJ.
Yeah.
That was
I just think he didn't know how to, and even if you don't use the snub the way that I'm saying you should, or even if you don't, like, he didn't know or doesn't know or hasn't figured out a way to change what he's preaching. And I think if you preach to kids for 3 or 4 years, X, Y, Z, and then this will happen, right? Do 1, 2, and 3, and then this will happen. And then they do 1, 2, and 3, and this doesn't happen. He hasn't figured out a way to motivate his team or have his team trust him and believe in him again. And it's not really his fault that they didn't get in, right?
No.
But that moment broke him, and it probably broke Florida State under him. Like, we've talked about this. I don't really see a way that he gets it back. I don't really see a way that he fixes this. And it's an impossible situation. I don't think any coach in the country would have known how or what to say in that spot or in that moment. What to do in that moment. I'll tell you what I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have given the entire staff raises and extensions. Yeah. But he didn't know how to respond to it with recruiting. He didn't know how to respond to it with his own players. He didn't know how to respond to it with motivating his team. He didn't know how to respond to it with the portal. He didn't know how to respond to it with retaining his players and having to pay too much money to keep a bunch of these losers around. And so all that said, I don't know what he should have done differently, how he should have used it differently. I don't get paid X million dollars a year to figure those things out, man. That is on a guy like Mike Norvell to figure out, not me or you, who just kind of opines on it on Sundays and Wednesdays when we're logged in here to the podcast. So I don't know, tough situation. I don't really know what he should have done differently, but I know that the way he did it certainly didn't work out. Harlan, I think we had a super chat there. We cut that one there and then roll our super chat up and then answer that or see what that says, and we'll roll up out of here. You can play the sound.
You're fired. Get out of here.
Who are the top 2 prospects out there for offensive line coach, a big-time hire that would have immediate impact on recruiting? Well, I was thinking about Rick Trickett, probably as the first one, and that's a little bit of a joke. No, I would not hire Rick Trickett back. I'll tell you, I don't have a great answer for this. I do think the trend, though, is becoming, and I think Dion did this. Didn't Dion go NFL guy for offensive line? Harlan, I don't know if you can look up quickly Colorado's coaching staff, but I do kind of like the idea of finding somebody that can develop from an NFL perspective. And obviously you have to be able to recruit too. So that's a tricky line to roll with. But I do think that kind of like you've done with defensive backs, you went and got a guy that was more familiar with the NFL side of things, had played in the NFL. Was it Sunseri? Was Sunseri their offensive line coach? No, defensive. He was on defensive line. Sorry, wrong side. But yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. I don't have a name, Richie. I don't know if you have a specific name or not, but I do think going to the NFL model of finding somebody that can develop and get guys ready, be able to sell like, hey, I've developed in the NFL. I can do this. I can put you that way is probably the way that I would go. I don't have a specific name, Richie. I don't know if you have a specific name or thought, but you like my NFL idea?
Yeah, and I think offensive line is one of the positions where you definitely want someone. They need to be a good recruiter. They have to be. Like that's one position where you really need someone who can develop the players. You think about running back, right? nobody coaches. No running back coach in the history of college football should take credit for what that running back did. That is just a natural, you have it or you don't, position, right? Receiver, yeah, you want someone who can develop you, and clearly we've not seen anyone get developed. You could argue Johnny Wilson if you want to, but I think he always had that talent in him, and with Jordan Travis, things just worked out. But most positions, like, what are you really developing? Like quarterback, we're seeing freshman quarterbacks all over the country, TJ, just lighting things up, and we can't throw for 100 yards between two quarterbacks at Florida State. So, not to go off on a tangent, but that's just the frustration. Again, it's there.
Yeah. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the super chat, my man. Thanks for tuning in. Richie, we've been on here for an hour. I think that's probably enough whining for the two of us for the day. My shout out again goes to the women's soccer team for winning their 5th straight ACC championship, a football that we can actually respect in Tallahassee. They will now go on to the the NCAA tournament and try to win their 2nd straight national championship. Won't be easy, but man, they showed a lot of resiliency this week in going 3-0. So, Richie, any shout outs on your end?
Yeah, shout out the Florida State men's basketball team. They have more wins than our football team, and they've only played 2 games. They had a nice win against Rice in Houston yesterday. So maybe we'll get the basketball minute coming back in a few weeks. We'll see.
Yeah, we need some positivity. So let's go get it, Coach Ham. Can we do a soccer minute? I'll do a soccer minute I'll do a soccer minute. I'll do a soccer minute. So, all right. Hey, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hey, hit the subscribe button on the way out. We really do appreciate it. I know these aren't fun, but we do appreciate you guys for logging in, tuning in, hanging out, all those things, especially when there's NFL games on and different things that you could be watching. I don't know maybe you guys are just all trolls that are logged in and watching this, but I pray for your mental health. Season tickets at Florida State next year should come with like a subscription to BetterHelp. I don't want to give them too much love because they don't sponsor us, but that would probably be a good, maybe sell some more tickets if it comes with a therapy-based service. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Appreciate Guthrie's, Rhoback, Garnet and Gold, all of you that hang out weekly. We will talk to you soon. We'll see you Wednesday night. We'll do a call-in show. Let you guys get some frustrations out. Harlan, thanks for your help. And Richie, good to see you as always. We'll talk to you guys soon. Go Noles.